Okay, between the time I last spoke with you and now, I turned some pages in my Prokofiev Sixth Sonata, and I'm back at movement number 1 that I haven't seen in, I think this is Monday, the 18th of February, so it's probably been since Thursday, a week ago. You can do the math, it's about 10 days ago, and probably February 7th. Yes, long time ago, far too long. For a brand new piece that I haven't memorized or learned well. But anyway, enough apologies. Here's the first movement. Let's see whether the marks that I've made stick. I did notice something from viewing a recent video. I talk over my playing far too often. It makes my talk a little indistinct, probably makes the playing a little indistinct. So I will try to intersperse those two different endeavors, and we'll see if I can make good on that promise. So, you heard a lot of hesitations. What I was trying to do was to recall certain ways in which I described some of those passages and try to get them to feed me. So those various mental breaths, as I call them, were designed for comfort or for clarity, and to avoid just mindlessly going through the score, not knowing for sure what I was doing, or putting myself in sight reading mode, where the information that might have gotten to my fingers didn't penetrate my consciousness, so I don't want that. I did notice, having not played this in a while, that the gestures necessary to toss through those three non-legato thirds, they have to be quite refined. In other words, if I'm cold as I am right now, it's just not fingerable. I don't want to have these interlocking fingerings, 5-3, 4-2, etc. What I'm relying on. I'm relying instead on the choreography. And if I move in too quickly, then I lose the opportunity to differentiate between the 4-2, where I want to be far enough out that I can then move more comfortably into the black note third, which has got to be far more into the keyboard than the 4-2. So that's better. Immediately, the moment I listen to myself and stay back a little longer, the more efficient the gesture becomes. Okay, I'm reviewing my left hand because I played that mostly without reference to the score. I kind of know now how the motives use diminution, or at least a compacting, a reduction in note values or a reduction in rests. But I had not described it well to myself how the left hand goes. Up to the D sharp, up to the D sharp, up to the D sharp, now a reinforcement of the D sharp. I'm not finding that E flat chord easily. It's not that it's hard to find, but I haven't told myself to go there, or how to go there. That's it. Little hesitation. Yes. Please, every fourth beat. Every one of the fourth beats of the 1, 2, 3, first three measures, D sharp, upper D sharp. That's worth reinforcing. me G sharps. G natural against G sharp the second time. That's Prokofiev. Quarter note. I've chosen to play fourth finger on C at the end of measure 5. It's not under my hand. So if I'm going to make it work, I have to be conscious of it. It's interesting, although it doesn't all come back so that it falls under my hand immediately. I remember the thoughts. In other words, the fingering I've indicated reminds me of the intervals, the fourth, the fifth, the diminished chord, and this, the F sharp minor, the G major, the F sharp minor, the seventh. All of that comes back in here. It's just not immediately accessible, and that's where I have to go. I have to go beyond just saying, "Ooh, I understand it," in favor of saying, "Ooh, I can play it." G major, F sharp, A major. Why shouldn't I go back to the tonic? A. So, how do I find A? I can find it either way. I have plenty of time to feel it, plenty of time to look, but I have to do at least one of those. I have to be conscious of the choice. A, please. A. Ah, see? Telling myself is what it took. Okay, and I felt it. It's something interesting. It's almost a little distracting to look to my left hand when my right hand is so busily doing all those arpeggios. So I'm thinking I will favor the feel of placing the left hand rather than the looking. That's part of the choreography of attention. It's not that you say, do everything you can to look, concentrate on, and see something, to be aware of it in all kinds of ways. You sometimes have to be aware of one part in one way and another part in another way. Okay, and that brings me to... Well, that would suffice. That would get me through the whole first statement. I reach there. Of this variation on the not only is it a triplet, for those of you with acute ears or good knowledge of the piece, I was obviously playing the wrong note here. So it's a good thing because I didn't know it at all anyway. So it's E flat chord, then the chromatic alteration to C flat on top and the bottom. And I've chosen 5-4-4. 5-4-4 to get me to 5. So it's 5-4-4-4. That's my grouping. Now do this. 5. Now 4 to 5. Okay, it's a little exotic, but it ends up giving giving me that linear relationship. So, now that is excellent. Let me go back. Okay. I gotta remember there's an oscillation between C sharp E, C natural E. The first, when there is, the first is always the C sharp E, the minor third, which sounds major because it provides A major. It's one of the quirks of our nomenclature. No, we call this a minor third, but because it fits into the major chord, I'm hearing a major sonority. Go figure. Fourth finger. And this of course, precedes the last triplet. So, and this is a straight triplet, melodically straight. It's just a repeated E flat. Okay, so. That shift is not intuitive at all because it requires a considerable gestural shift, well, geographical shift. I have to go to a different place on the keyboard and to a finger that's not immediately available, so I have to know it. That's a conscious decision rather than a physically learned thing. Until that shift becomes learned. My hand down where my third finger is and my thumb is. There's nothing worse than trying to reinforce something you don't quite know. You know, if you test yourself too much, for example, when you're memorizing something, you think you know it. Testing it just means you're likely to doubt that you know it or to make the wrong choice. So in this case, it's better to stop and reinforce the right choice. Find my way to that F sharp minor chord and to the placement on C sharp at the bottom, which I'm noticing I'm not comfortable with. I haven't notated a fingering. I don't know exactly how I find my C sharp, so it's worth it to explore. Fifth is obviously the closest. I'm already on fifth here. And it's going to be an isolated fifth, so I'm suspicious. I have been playing fourth because it's the nearest available long finger. When I'm about to go to fourth, I think, maybe, when something just sort of suggests itself to me. So what I am doing instead is I'm going to go to fifth. And then I have 5 going to 2-1, so I make one decision. Gives me 2 events. So that's for peace of mind and simplicity. So much nicer. All right. Yes, of course. I don't know why I attributed my fingering choice to something more exotic than it really was. In measure 11, I had already explained I went to 5, but what I neglected to discover is sticking with my second finger on E flat is so much easier than even finding the more comfortable 5-3-1 for this augmented chord. So 5 to 4. Yes. Okay, now I'm into this more, shall I call it, developmental section, starting in measure almost 11, almost 12, where the left hand starts dancing around, playing the opening motive, and the right hand plays this theme, which is going to make its appearance many times. So, first the repeated note version, then the leap down, and then the chromatic. Interesting. Okay. It's good that the right hand is simple because the left hand is going to jump around like crazy. I want some stability. That'll help. There's an A in measure 11 that ends the preceding statement. So it goes, let's see. And then the next thematic element starts on the downbeat of measure 12, but it's the same pitch. So that's interesting. Led by that little anacrusic 8th note on G. And then that's it, just one of those wrong notey moments. Then it clarifies into octaves. I'll leave the pedaling alone for now. I say I've notated sostenuto because I wanted to clarify the texture, but boy, I'm more interested in finding these notes and in remembering what must have been a gestural endeavor. In other words, this feels, this E flat G, D F sharp, C E, very different from the fingers in the right hand that get tossed into the black notes. This comes to the white notes from black notes, black, all white, and away from the thumb. Of course, well, either Prokofiev or some smart editor here suggested 1-5 on the last one. I get it. Do I want to do it? I'm not sure. It gives the same kind of toss with the right hand because the thumb is not involved, but I don't know that it's worth it. And I have 2 choices. I may have explored this before. That's part of the problem of having waited for 10 or 12 days before reinforcing. One choice would be to do the obvious and come out on 3 and 5 on the white notes. The other would be to reapproach the keyboard for the last third. So play the first two, which are comfortably under the hand, and have a renewed attack on the third one. The one thing about the renewed attack is it makes it feel more like a very strong approach in the right hand earlier on. One distinct difference is, for whatever reason, there's no accent indicated in this left hand crossover figure. Unlike, but you know what? When he plays it as just 16ths without the preliminaries, he eliminates the accent. So I guess that's a good thing. So now I think if I from my fat fingers, I can do it, but I'm going to try to live with 3, 4, 5. It's simply to think about. I'll hold that decision in abeyance a little bit. I'm thinking I'll stick with the fingers as they fall. I'm going to write that down because if I leave the fingering as written, the printed fingering, I'm going to assume that I made that decision to adopt it. 3 in a row. And it was challenging. Let me think bizarre thoughts. Not too many available. Okay, there is one. It's 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 4. Involved a lot more motion. Interesting. Changes. So the right hand gets to take over. That's so much more comfortable for the right hand than the other one is for the left hand. Partly because I get to go through the 2 black note long fingers, 2, 5. Closing figure of this passage, I'm going to finger the way I did before, 5. The only difference between that and this one is the beginning G. So, almost. So, the most problematical section by far, so far, is this intervening section of jumpy A motives in between the main thematic statements. Let me look at the second book. yes, I can practice, and I may need to practice that left hand alone, but it creates a rather peculiar phenomenon because the way it sounds, which is just a portion of two different voices, the tossed around A-motive voice and the melodic voice, this, neither one of them has an integrity because I'm just playing what my left hand is playing. So it may be useful for me to do that, but my ear, on the other hand, cries out, that doesn't make any sense. So maybe I'll play more hands together and see if that feeds me more immediately. At the very least, this does, but this is all marking time anyway, so. So this is worth noting. In measure 15, the left hand are playing the same pitches. E flat key to start. But at 17, the left hand is playing F A, the right hand is playing A flat C. And back. So, I have to file that one right. Okay. And so on. As you can see, still it's not sticking. I think because of the regularity of this two measures ought to be something that I take, I have to build up as a chunk. In other words, it's melodically reasonable, simple to understand, and remembering these is easy. My left hand does all the playing, unlike, I think, well, that's worthy of a thought. He writes, Mandois, you know what? Have I been doing something silly? No, that's right. No, he did indicate play the upper ones with the right hand, not skip over. So I can't remember if earlier on I had been practicing playing the left hand over, but MD distinctly indicates right hand. I certainly owe Prokofiev the opportunity to see whether what he meant or what he suggested works. In a way, what I perhaps has been doing is easier to accomplish, certainly from a textural point of view. Now I'm really curious, so I'm going to write myself one of those research notes, look it up in other editions and see what other editors suggest. So now I'm going to Well, maybe you can help me out here, oh listener. I distinctly remember thinking that it was suggested that I cross my hands over. So, do I remember that correctly? Did I misread MD as MS or something like that? The interesting thing about these MDs is whether you're reading it in Italian or in English, not English rather, Italian or French, it's MD. In Italian or French in the left, of course, it's MS or MG, but there's no doubting that when the composer wrote MD, he meant right hand. And I think I've been thinking of it as left hand for some bizarre reason. And I had just been complaining about the fact that this particular fingering is hard to do sequentially, and because it's going towards the weak side of the left hand. It's going towards the strong side of the right hand, so I can certainly understand preferring it in the right hand. Very interesting, huh? Okay, I admit it. I may have misread it, the text, and I may have mislearned it. It's a good thing it didn't stick, because if I did mislearn it, there's nothing much to get rid of. It's just a mislearning that didn't stick. It's a little too bad that phrase, it's a 3-bar phrase, it seems to me. Yes, it is. 1, 2, 3. And then the next phrase is like 3.5, because the fourth measure is 2 quarter notes. And all the other measures are 4 quarter notes. So, alas, the first phrase ends on the page turn, which is always irritating. So I want to know what happens on the downbeat of the page turn. That's what happens. So this shifts to FA. Check that. Is it up? It is up, but it's just a third. More notation, but probably 4/2. Is it interfering? Try that without turning the page. Okay. And then the left hand crosses over. Maybe that's what I remember. There's no hiding. I can go back and check. That's one of the interesting things. You know, our memories are so peculiar, the way we shade the truth and change reality. But because I have video proof of what I said and thought before, I will know soon enough. So, and I didn't tell myself, change the chord. a chunk that I want to put together, and that's this chunk. In other words, this is bits of information that need to be stuck together. So I'm going to spend a little more time doing that. You can feel when I find a groove, like when I found the finger, the thought and the gesture here, it just sinks into place, or it makes itself immediately intact and available. That's not true of this stuff yet. So, I find myself nudo. Change the chord. Yeah. Gotta get rid of the sus-nudo. Hanging on for inappropriate reasons. I don't need. This is something where I might be using the damper pedal. Yes. It's interesting how it throws my orientation completely when I go to that measure 17 from 16. It's mostly the shift in the chord in the left hand. And there's a change in the right hand, it goes to a smaller chord. It shouldn't be a big deal. But this, after all of these, maybe after what I said before, I was wrong. In other words, what I need to do is practice my left hand more on its own to develop an identity for what it has to do. And then that too. So, there's a rest for the left. And then I have to find the F, which is in the middle of the melody. F to the F, and that's it. So, oops. It's actually something that I tell my students often. I have them start in the middle of a phrase or a motive or whatever to develop a familiarity between events that otherwise don't tend to feel connected mentally or musically, but very often if the body doesn't get used to connecting them, it just waffles around not knowing what to do. And here I am. I tried to avoid practicing this, but that's exactly what I needed to practice. So, go figure. As always, practicing can be very humbling, because when you think you're smarter than yourself, or smarter than your situation, very often you discover that's not true, that you still have to pay. You have to learn the way you learn best, and you have to keep reminding yourself of that. There's another mistake I sometimes make in trying to internalize the information too quickly. I try to test myself by not looking at the music, when what I did that time was just the right combination of looking at the music as a reminder for the decisions I had made, and then I didn't really want to look at the music all the time. I wanted to know where I was going. I wanted a clarity of intent, and I got much more fluency that time, even though I was looking at the music a fair amount. I wasn't relying on it to tell me every note, but it was giving me security. So, for example, here, it told me, oh yes, don't forget that shift. That sort of thing. So, excuse me, G sharp. Well, you can tell right away that it's better. So. Left hand has to shift up a whole extra octave. It's not here. Right hand comes down alone. So right hand by itself. By itself. Right. Right hand by itself. By itself. And then there's plenty of time for here. Place. Oops. C sharp. Up. I don't know if I should call this F because it's F A, and the leading note, the note that I see that's closest to my eye, and that's thumb, which best represents my hand, is A. So here, the top note is G. Here, the top note is A. That gives me the sense of ascent. If I say F after saying G or something, then I'm giving myself a miscue. Misleading cue, that's for sure. And there's two different sensations in the left hand. One to the white notes, one to the half black notes. Too. So it has to leave a little early to get there in time. It has to leave before the left hand, which has more notes. So it's look right, then think left. G. Whoops. Tell myself the wrong thing. A. And then D. Tell myself D. Which is, of course, the same chord, B, D, as in the right hand. That should be Q and up. Play where you are. Do what you've done. have this significant hesitation on that threshold. Yep. I almost consider the sostenuto pedal to be a completely different element from the damper pedal. I know they work differently, but when I am considering using the sostenuto pedal to clarify texture, it's almost as if it's an extension of my fingerings and my choices for how long I hold things. So I will practice it on its own way before I would consider adding the damper just to provide extra texture. Just to see, because it's almost a melodic element itself. So, in other words, do I clear the sonority of everything but the A octave? Alright, I got the best transition there. I still felt just lucky, which is not a good feeling. So that it started to feel different, which is to say, more ingrained, more automatic. But I'm playing it too quickly for the place where I am, which is on the threshold of assimilating it. See what this is. The note below A is G, and I'm somehow playing Fs. This kind of thing requires a very specific placement, especially when you're dealing with just white notes. You have to define how you deliver your hand to the keyboard. So the sensation becomes familiar, and what you say to yourself becomes familiar. And I'm using sostenuto. Oh, there's a telephone. I'll be back.